Yo, welcome to another episode of Artillery, the podcast that celebrates artists whose work intersects with politics. I want to start off episode 7 with updates on topics we've covered before in former episodes. On October 1st, NPR began operating independently of federal funding. The caption on their Instagram post read, "It's the beginning of a new chapter, but we aren't going anywhere." Their plan is to reduce their own budget by $5 million and to initiate the NPR network, which will focus on collaborating on branding and sponsorship opportunities between NPR and its local stations. Unfortunately, the loss of funding has been too much for some of the smaller TV stations. The New York Times reported that at least 245 rural stations were at risk of shutting down. For some, though, their fate is more certain. In addition to slashing hundreds of jobs and gutting programming, a few stations are already planning on fully closing in the not-so-distant future. KWSU-TV at Washington State University will close at the end of this year, and New Jersey PBS will close by the end of 2026. But in a shocking, not really, I'm just being dramatic, shocking turn of events, 30 paintings from whom I call the father of PBS, Mr. Bob Ross, and his happy little clouds and trees will be auctioned off with the proceeds going to public TV stations. There's something truly serendipitous about all of this, and I would venture to guess that Mr. Ross didn't anticipate that his work on PBS would contribute to the survival of American public television someday. But what a beautiful and also sad way to commemorate his legacy. Shifting gears, what is going on at the Kennedy Center right now? Apparently, their recent gala raised more money than the center has ever seen, but if you'll pardon the lewd suggestion, the carpet doesn't match the drapes. According to the Washington Post, ticket sales and audience attendance are both down. Since early September, 43% of tickets remained unsold across the 3 biggest venues. Those would be the Opera House, the Concert Hall, and the Eisenhower Theater. In comparison, 80% and 93% of tickets were sold in the fall of 2023 and 2024, respectively. Yikes. And remember Amy Sherald, the painter who chose to pull her exhibition from the Smithsonian because a key part of the exhibit, Transforming Liberty, was going to be pulled? Well, Sherald has made headlines once again, but this time with some positive news. The Baltimore Museum of Art is housing the show called American Sublime. To quote the headline, WMAR2 News Baltimore, Cheryl's show is, quote, DC's loss and Baltimore's gain, end quote. And it seems as though the show is doing quite well. The museum already is seeing record numbers of visitors, and I guess the saying is right. There's no such thing as bad press, and the work is beautiful. Let's not get it twisted. She says, quote, every time you look at the portrait, something is happening inside of you, end quote. When asked if she felt her work was political, she quips, quote, I do now. It can be art on Monday and political on Tuesday, end quote. The exhibit opened in Baltimore on November 2nd and will be there until April 5th. And you know what? It's a good thing this moved because the government shutdown closed some of these federal museums anyway. However, as we are aware, the Sherald case of censorship was not an isolated incident within the museum field. But like the aforementioned example, we have solutions. Before the Americas, an exhibit that was one of the earliest casualties of war against DEI, which was to be shown at the Art Museum of the Americas in DC, has a new home at the Gillespie Gallery at the George Mason University School of Art. The exhibit showcased 39 artists, including Sherald, who represent African American, African Latino, and Caribbean communities. Cheryl Edwards, who curated the show, said she felt relieved and redeemed to have a new home. And what about the journalists? In October, major news organizations like CNN, Fox, the Associated Press, and the New York Times refused to sign on to new Pentagon guidelines, which would, among other things, threaten their credentials based on what they reported. And now that I'm taking a journalism class, I'm learning a lot about the importance of reporting factual, verified information. So, what is Pete Hegseth so afraid of? The truth? I have a feeling this issue of freedom of speech isn't going anywhere anytime soon, so I've enlisted the help of entertainment lawyer Ari Solotoff to help us break down the First Amendment. All right, thanks for being on Artillery. Would love to talk with you a little bit about the First Amendment.
Yeah, well, thanks. Delighted to be here, Damien, and thanks for the invitation. And just quick disclaimer, we'll talk about First Amendment and some of these questions and how I think about it. Obviously this is not legal advice, and just these are my personal opinions and not anything related to that of my firm. So like those usual notes just kind of attend to which I have to pay attention to
Absolutely.
in my work.
Yeah.
But so I really appreciate the chance just to kind of talk about the First Amendment and how I've been seeing it evolve, both like in my practice and professionally and otherwise. And I mean, we can all Google and go actually read the First Amendment, right? And it's and maybe it's worth just reciting it here, right? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion prohibiting the free exercise thereof, right? So there's the religious peace, religious freedom. Congress should make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. And Congress shall make no law that respecting or abridging the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of their grievances. And so there's a lot like contained in this one First Amendment, which was within the Bill of Rights, and it's a lot packed in there if you think about it. How much is actually considered? And so, but they're related in a way, right? They're all we've got religion, we've got speech, we've got the press, we've got the right to assemble. And we've got the right to actually speak up and have your concerns heard at the local and national and other level. And so I think if we kind of peel that back a layer, including from our context, it's a lot about voice, isn't it? I mean, it's about being heard,
Right.
and being able to both express yourself in whatever modality, whether it be an artistic one or in a print form or published form, or even just express yourself by going out in public and speaking up for what you believe in. And all these things are about modes of expression. So, so I think, to kind of, that's, I think the first cut. I think the next cut, and I'll just share a quick story here. I was thinking about this in preparation for today. Believe it or not, so when I was in the fifth grade, I wrote an essay for an essay contest. It was an essay contest that was put on by the League of Women Voters in New York. It was the New York League of Women Voters. And the essay contest prompt was, what does the First Amendment mean to you? That was the prompt.
Oh, wow. In
And
fifth grade.
yeah, this is fifth grade. And I guess the timing matters here. I mean, this is 1990, 1991. I'm dating myself now,
It's
which
okay.
was I think the 200th anniversary of the adoption of the First Amendment, going back to 1790, 1791. So that was in the air, just like we're kind of coming up on the 250th anniversary of the founding of the country.
Right.
And so I think that there was an encouragement around, like, what does it mean to you? Okay, well, so I sort of had to take a step back and really think about, what does it mean to me? And for my fifth grade mind, the most I could come up with was to say that the First Amendment is a little bit like a superhero. It's that presence that exists. We don't always know it's there, but it's
Right.
operating in the background.
Uh-huh.
And it really steps up when we need it. And that's we expect that, when these things come to a head, around questions that might infringe upon or take away our First Amendment, or make it more challenging for us to express our First Amendment freedoms, that there will be a superpower, a superhero there to sort of step in with us and to say, this is something that we believe in.
You thought of that
And
in the fifth grade?
yeah, well,
That's pretty cool.
superhero. So I kind of like that. I still think, I was thinking it still resonates today,
Yeah.
and, we think about the First Amendment a little bit as our, hidden superhero.
Yeah.
And at various times, that superhero is under duress, and sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less.
Yeah.
And so that's my impression.
I love that idea of it sort of just being in the background and, being there when we need it. Is there anything that's not protected under this amendment?
Well, I mean, that really takes us into whole layers of what is traditionally been considered protected and was not protected. So we'll just sort of start with your question. There are limitations, right? This is not the freedom of speech is not without limitation. Well, actually going to focus on that as opposed to limitations related to other aspects of the First Amendment, because this is a whole, there are many other aspects of it. But if we just think about freedom of speech for a moment, there are limitations, in terms of like time, place, and manner is what we tend to refer to or hear it as, like when and where and how it gets, we express our freedom of speech. It's not a free for all. So I think that can be a factor. And we can talk about that more, in terms of like even how media is available, right? Certain media is not available all the time. Sometimes it's only available at certain times of the day. All that comes back to time, place, and manner restrictions. But there are also content restrictions, like viewpoint restrictions, but they're very limited. And any content that might incite violence, that involves threats, that is, fighting words, defamation with actual malice or constitutional defamation, and content that is seen as obscene, would be considered to be limitations on our freedom of speech. So it's, I tend to think of, all of this as many things in the law are kind of on a spectrum. You got on one end of the spectrum, you've got our freedom of speech. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got the limitations on the freedom of speech. And not surprisingly, I think if we, just look at it, a lot of the limitations on content, really focus on public safety, right? Like just health and safety. Yeah. And that you can't use speech to essentially incite violence or to produce material that is, from a community's perspective viewed as, quote unquote obscene.
And are those limitations governed by the state, or is that a federal mandate?
Well, I mean, I think there's both state and federal in the sense of state law, and there's also court made law, judicially made law in the form of Supreme Court decisions that have kind of address many of these different kinds of limitations on speech. And then, there can be further extensions of that at a state or local level to the extent they don't conflict with, federal law, or sometimes they're being challenged, as a result. So I think, it's a good question, which is to say, like, when looking at these questions, one really has to dig deeper than, just is it allowed or not allowed? There could be all kinds of factors that, contribute to freedom of expression.
Okay. And so more of a philosophical question, I guess. What does that mean for artists and journalists and folks out there whose freedom of speech is being challenged a lot these days?
Well, I mean, I think let me also just share, like, First Amendment questions and media, as part of my practice. It's not like the focus of my practice. So I tend to think of First Amendment questions, and I tend to think of this work more from a copyright-driven perspective, and I can tell you a little bit more about where that comes from. Going back, the whole concept of copyright was really driven by censorship, right? Who had the right to make copies was often driven by whether or not, when you publish something, it was subject to review, usually by either a crown or sort of, local authority. And so the sort of worlds of copyright and censorship are kind of interwoven that way.
Yeah.
And in fact, like the word copyright, right, like literally who has the right to make a copy, is driven by the historical basis. So I think, and then within your question, I think we separate even further to say, there's artistic expression and then there's journalistic expression. Journalism is its own area
Right.
and not my expertise. And in fact, I would encourage you to have another person on to
Yeah.
really
Well,
focus
I'm taking
on.
journalism classes right now, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll be able to do something a little later.
Exactly. Sort of pick up that thread
Yeah.
because, what is journalism and what are the standards behind it? What is fact and how it's presented? Who has the right to present that, publish it, and how is it protected? That's a whole line of thought. And so I'll put a pin in that and come back to, the artistic expression piece for a moment. We think of expression, art speech is sort of the way I would kind of boil it down.
Hmm.
Art speech is not necessarily what is considered or expressly considered core speech. Core speech tends to be political. It
Right.
can be religious. It could be academic. But art speech has sort of been inferred in a way, but not necessarily like expressly adopted. And so when we think of art speech, we're usually thinking of, how does the creative process, how does something that you make reflect the world that we live in, and how does it communicate something, usually in non-cognitive ways, usually non-speech ways, right? So
Right.
through sound, image, color, form. Musical notation is a good example. We're communicating through music, but it's not necessarily through words.
Right.
But we know that these communicative elements are visceral, and they sort of touch on our ability to kind of understand something at a different level. And so, through art, we sense, and I think one commentator has suggested that, through art, we sense the artist's intuition about life, about power,
Hmm.
about reality, and about death. And, all these things are kind of interwoven in art speech. But art speech, as we know it, can also be politically subversive. As you and I both know, I mean, the best example is, Shostakovich. You sort
Hmm.
of think of, the way that Shostakovich was kind of in political conversation with, the regime, the Stalin regime. So much of that was like embedded. Sometimes it was clear, sometimes it wasn't, right? Sometimes it was
Right.
celebratory, sometimes it was, critical.
Yep.
Um, and so I think we understand that art can convey a message, it can convey a viewpoint, and that particular viewpoint and content can often reflect or how we feel about societal norms and traditions and values. Um, so I think to kind of one commentator who I sort of look to a lot in this space is Viet Thanh Nguyen. He's an author, and he talks a lot about the ways in which we tend to kind of oversimplify messaging, to a particular community. And I think what he champions is the fact that we live in a very rich and diverse world, and we need to kind of dig a little bit deeper to understand the context in which the art itself is being brought into existence.
Hmm.
And in doing so, in understanding that context, and I use that word really deliberately, we then learn more about, why the freedom of expression is inherent
Yeah.
in, in the work being offered. It's when I think there can be sort of an oversimplification or, application of stereotypes that then we sort of lose the context and then we
Yeah.
lose the message.
Yep.
And then it starts to feel like, the conversation starts to center on things that really challenge, one's freedom of speech.
Right.
I'll just share one other thought here, which is,
Yeah.
um, I think for artists who are navigating this, it's sort of, it is being aware of and being intentional about, what is the form in which they're communicating, what are the
Mhm.
circumstances, what is the purpose,
Right.
and the more that can kind of be elaborated, I think the more opportunity there is to sort of stand with that superpower, if you will,
Yeah.
of what this is all about. And so context matters, and I think that's especially true for issues around the First Amendment.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for all of that clarity. I'm sure the artists who are listening will appreciate that, and will have a sort of a sense of comfort as we continue to navigate these waters. So,
I'll give you one other thing. There are a number of resources out there. If folks are looking for additional information, the League of American Orchestras has a great section on its website about creative expression resources. There's the National Coalition Against Censorship. And the Ford Foundation has a whole, website dedicated to creativity and free expression. So I would say there's a lot of resources out there that I think folks can draw upon if they're looking for more information or kind of dive into any of these, questions more deeply.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks, Ari. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
You too.
Take care.
When I wrote an African American Requiem, I have to admit I felt a tinge of anxiety for the movement Lacrimosa, which puts the national anthem in a minor key and highlights it in a way that is the opposite of patriotism. Or maybe it's the most patriotic rendition that exists. I started writing the Requiem in 2016 after witnessing countless black folks being killed by the police, and with the start of an administration that I feared would reverse many of the advances we'd made as a country. I wanted the movement to feel like a funeral march, like the long, tired walk from oppression to freedom, and as you may or may not sing along with the low clarinet as it intones the notes of the anthem, you notice that I omit the word free. It's actually a device I use throughout the movement to let the audience know that I don't think we're quite in the land of the free just yet, but it is the part folks seem to remember the most. I enacted my First Amendment rights as an artist and as an American, but as I said, I was nervous because, I float in the waters of classical music, a historically white space, an audience with disparate beliefs, many of whom are different than my own, and the uncertainty kind of scared me. Would anyone play the piece because of this one particular movement, or would I be harassed or challenged? I don't mind being challenged, but I guess more so would I be harassed? And, it led me to think about how other artists must feel when they decide to make a bold statement. So I asked my friends. Kiki Konvos and Artillery are going to have a little, Kiki, if you will. So I want to pose this question to you. With regards to your art making, what scares you? All right. How y'all doing? This is Artillery / Kiki Konvos / Afton Battle. And we just here to shoot the shit. How y'all doing? What's going on?
I'm good. I said y'all gonna force me back into combos because everybody keeps saying, "Where's my show? I want my show to come back." But
yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. Every time I come on Artillery, it's like a heavy time. Something.
When is it not a heavy time though?
Truly.
This whole year has been a heavy time.
2025 is really
trying to.
I mean, she's not giving 2020, but she's got her own lane.
Yeah, she got her own lane, and she a pretty good match, I will have to say, because
she's on the HOV Express.
Right. And don't have to pay.
No tolls.
How are you feeling, Karen? Because I know you're traveling around a lot. How are you feeling about like all these different places that you go? Are you seeing like a difference in the climate and all the places that you have been seeing in the last, I guess, several months?
Interestingly enough, I'm glad you asked that question because yes, it definitely feels heavy. It always feels hard to travel. Like travel is nothing like it used to be. You know what I mean? It's not fun.
Yeah.
Exciting. It's like it used to be. Maybe it's my big age, it's different traveling at 25 than 50. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But
and the government shut down because you don't know if you're gonna get off the ground.
Right. So when I was flying just like 2 weeks ago, we were circling because there were too many planes in the air and not enough air traffic control.
Oh, that's great.
And so there was a threat of having to land somewhere else. And thankfully I was going home, but I'm thinking, oh, if I was going to another gig and I had the, again, extra stress, right? Like, how am I going to get myself to from point B,
Hmm.
from
Right.
C now, point
Right.
C to like, B or whatever. But also, and maybe this may be offensive to some people, but it's a reality. Like, I am oftentimes very shocked when white men are more friendly, generous, helpful in this climate.
Mm.
When I'm traveling, because I don't know, I am a woman traveling solo. You don't know what you're going to get with this climate, right? You
Right.
don't, you're traveling with strangers. And so sometimes when someone is extra friendly and like literally picks up my suitcase and puts it's just that simple. Like literally it's like see me struggling and someone wants to help. Or I'm sitting next to my seatmate and he's helping me get my drink or whatever. You know what I mean? Because I sit in window seat and of course, anyway, like just the things like that. And it's so stupid and it's so like amateur hour, but it's so real. Like when people and maybe other people feel like when they encounter a black person who is very warm and friendly, and it's like that idea when people ask you what you do and you tell them you're an opera singer and they're like completely shocked, and you like
Right.
and you go, now are you shocked because you feel like I'm young, or you shocked because you feel like I'm because I'm a black person doing classical music, maybe I'm conflating the two, but I mean, I really do in this time, I really do feel, I don't want to say unsafe, but it is shocking to me when people are more kind,
Mm.
because the opposite, we're infused so much during the day of like hateful things. Again, it's that algorithm, right?
Right. I mean, I think you
And
got to.
maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it's real for me. You just don't know.
So when you say you're shocked, are you like what kind of shocked?
I'm
Like
surprised.
like in a good way, or are you suspicious?
I'm suspicious.
Got it. Okay. Because I was gonna I
It's
was gonna
it's
say like I think we all are trying to find the good in humanity. So if somebody wants to pick up a suitcase, cool. But you a little suspicious of that?
only because, but again, when you're in different parts of the country, different parts of the world, constantly you experience aggressions.
I do want to say, in the midst of all of this, it's clear to me that it's not always been this way, obviously.
Right.
And I do hear and feel what you are saying, Karen, and what you're saying, Damien. And I think to myself, man, I don't ever remember it always being like this. In my adult life, I don't have a memory of feeling this edgy
Yeah.
and on edge. Um, and I think the only time I feel like I don't have that feeling is when I'm in a community of people, of Black people, brown people, people of the global majority, and there's some either arts centric or focused kind of thing, or there's community gestures, whether we're, having a meal or,
Hmm.
whatnot. And I could know one person in a group of 100, or I can know no people in a group of 200. But I feel like because we're all there together,
Yep.
we've all opted into this positive thing.
Yep.
We all have the same mentality and mindset and sensibility.
Yeah.
And it takes me out of this wackadoo world right now and into this place of like, oh yeah, this is, oh, this is life. Yeah, this is so great. And I try to hold on to that feeling when when I leave, when it's over,
Yeah.
because that is the humanity part of the thing that, like you were saying earlier, Damien, of holding on to some type of humanity, of the feeling that things are positive and good, and trying to find more of that in daily life
Yep.
is maybe the anecdote to, the doom scrolling and the feeling of heaviness all the time. So, how do we find more of that?
Yeah. I feel that. I mean, it's why I have B7, saved in my phone. Like they're like the first people that I can go to, right? It's one of the reasons why I want to do this particular podcast because I love Afton and Karen, y'all my homegirls, and just to have this minute to just fellowship with other Black artists is it can take you out of the craziness for a minute. But before we started talking, I was talking about how the Philharmonic played the Requiem last weekend, and every time we get to the Lacrimosa part of the Requiem, which is the movement that uses the Star Spangled Banner in the minor key and takes out the word free and all this stuff, I'm sitting in my audience and I feel a little tinge of anxiety about it because, and I do know where it's coming from, but I wonder, like, are there things, Karen, that you have put out that you feel nervous about, particularly right now? And Afton, in your support of artists, is there anything that you are scared for them about, particularly now? Because you want the freedom to just create art, and now freedom of speech is being questioned and challenged and all this stuff. But as an artist, I feel like what I did was I invoked my First Amendment rights of free speech and used the national anthem in this way. But especially when we took the Requiem down to Texas, I didn't know what was going to happen. And so there is this constant fear that I have. And, particularly a lot of the work that I do is social justice related, even as far as loving goes. I've never gotten a bad email or gotten any kind of pushback or anything like that, but I do wonder if those people are out there. So anyway, Karen, what are your thoughts?
Yes. And specifically right now, I'm about to do the premiere of the Gladys Bentley.
Oh yeah.
In
Dallas.
In Dallas, yes, in Dallas. And as I'm working on it now, I'm like, not only, is the entire creative team Black women, in addition to we are talking about this historic, heroic Black queer woman who lived out loud and, who is this unsung figure. I've done a couple of interviews. For those who don't know, there's a piece that is premieres in a week. It's titled Drag. It is
November 6th?
November 7th, 8th, 9th with the Dallas Symphony. Well, maybe by then it would already premiere by the time you release this. But this piece is like it is a celebration of the great drag king Gladys Bentley, who was one of the prominent musical figures during the Harlem Renaissance. She was a full-figured, dark-skinned Black woman who was queer Black woman who married a white woman during this 1930s, and So anyway, I saw that I came across her story. I had never heard of her before, even though she's a Philadelphian. I had never heard of her, and came across the story in 2020, and I thought her life is an opera. And so now, 5 years later, Dallas Symphony has come on to support a smaller work that celebrates her. And I am nervous because we're in the midst of everybody's rights being stripped away. And we are smack in the middle of like Brahms and Dvorak.
Right.
With a very historic, conservative orchestra, and listen, they were first to say yes to the commission.
Okay.
But again, it was what, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, we were talking about this, it wasn't as contentious as it is now. So
Yeah.
yes, I am nervous and concerned, and people being like, why, and now questioning why it's important. I did an interview last week, and the reviewer was just kept asking me like, well, the journalist kept asking me like, well, why is it important? Why is it important to tell this story right now? Why is it important? And I'm like,
I hate that question.
I totally hate that question. First of all, if you know anything about me, you know I'm always going to center Black women's stories. Period. End of story. So before you even come to the table
He didn't do his
to
homework.
interview me, you already know.
Right.
That means you've not done your homework. Number one.
Exactly.
Number two, what do you mean why? We should tell all the stories on the lyric stage.
Why not is the question. Why not?
Why not? This woman was a star. She was the first, like one of the first millionaire Black artists during the time. She lived out loud in the 30s when it was the most dangerous time for Black queer people. What do you mean, why?
So what'd you say?
Why?
What'd you say?
What do you mean, why?
Yeah, good.
You know me. I mean, I was very, I gave a very.
You have a very classy way of cutting somebody.
I sure do. That's my charm. That's
Virgo.
my superpower. That's my superpower. But like I'm like, what happened to all the promises? What happened to all the things? What happened to all of the stuff that we were going to do all this, we were going to do better. But anyway, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. But yes, I am. But also every piece that I have curated, created, been a part of in the last, almost outside of the traditional canon repertoire that I've done, has been like social justice leaning, songs in flight, loving, of thee I sing, which is so necessary. That recital was so, and Afton presented it when she was general director of Fort Worth Opera, but so necessary right now. Florence Price in a way, this kind of like woman who was shut out, but wrote all this incredible music. But like in African
Queens.
Hello,
right.
like and you know what? Just like your pieces, they always get great reviews. People are standing up at the end, they're crying, they're clapping. So why? Why? It's because of those reactions. It's because if we don't do this work, it doesn't get done.
And I've said this so many times this week. We're not doing anything new. Think about Beethoven. Think about Shostakovich. Think about Britain. All these Mozart even. Those operas, they're very political, and people go to the hall and they go see them and they don't think anything of it. We're not doing anything differently than the people who came before us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I, as someone who supports artists and someone who champions artists and champions the idea of giving artists places and spaces to create, I've never once been afraid of what I offer up, right? So when I was general director of Fort Worth Opera, I was never afraid of what I was putting forward because I believed in it so staunchly that I knew its place and space and I knew its reason and purpose, that I didn't have a fear about it. And I knew people would show up for it, whether it was a night of Black excellence or Entre Amigos celebrating the Hispanic community, of the I Sing, African American Requiem. Like I knew people would show up for it and I knew that they would appreciate it. Even when I brought Karen to Lyric and we did Of the I Sing, I wasn't afraid of what that was because to, Karen's point, that recital is underdone and it is so incredibly necessary. First time I presented it was in 22, right? It was necessary then for show and presented it in 24, necessary again. So I have not yet felt apprehensive, anxious, had any anxiety about artists who I support as individuals, or if I have the opportunity to support and or present their work. Because I take as much pride in it as they do. And I'm like, well, if they standing 10 toes down in it, I do as well.
Yeah.
I support, and so I haven't had the feeling of being nervous about it. There's always going to be the naysayers and the people in the back who don't like X, Y, and Z. I mean, I remember receiving a letter from some donor in Fort Worth about the Traviata that we presented. Now, this was in a pandemic when we were not trying to have people in the theater for 3 hours or anything. So we were doing truncated versions of stuff. And the letter was a reprimand, if you will, for having a diverse cast because it's La Traviata. And
And there are no black Italians or Hispanic or Asian
not living in
folks who
Paris
could
in
have
this
lived,
person's mind.
right? Who could have, I mean, yeah, Paris, who could have lived during that time.
Clearly not. Um, and so, there are always those people out there. And you know what I say to that? And that's why I did it.
Mm,
And that's why it needed to happen.
yeah.
Because you needed to see what is possible outside of the little square box or round circle or rectangle that you experience life in.
Mm.
That's why I did it. That's
Amen.
why I did it.
You know what? I think you just made me feel better. I'm not going to be nervous anymore.
Don't be nervous.
Yeah, and I
For
don't even
every
know.
one person, yeah, for every one person that's like, I really didn't like that, there are 10 others who loved it and didn't have the means or
Right.
the vehicle to tell you or to express it, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think you want people to like it. But I also think the whole point of this is to spark discussion and for people to not like it. And then they can tell you why, and then you can tell them why they should like it.
Exactly. There was a when there after Fort Worth, we did the talk back, and this lady asked me, "Well, why did you end it with love? Why did you end of Love and Justice with love? Because you had all these big, dramatic, dynamic, justice pieces or whatever." And I think she wanted me to. I think she thought that the piece should end more
Mm.
I don't want to say accusatory. I didn't want to, you know what I mean? But she questions why I ended it with love. The last word I say is love, and the last visual that you see is love in all of these different languages. And I said to her, because I want you to walk out of the theater remembering that without love, without seeing someone as human, there's no way that anyone can have justice.
Mm.
And that God is love, humanity is love. Like, I want you to leave the theater with that visual and that word. And she kind of was just like, I think she got it. I
Was
think
she
she
put
got
off
it.
by that? I mean, why would anyone be put off by that?
Right. Well, and again, you see this beautiful 50-minute it's a fifth experience of like all the diversity and all of the things and all of the it has everything in this piece. But even why she would even question, right, I don't know why she would question that. Don't you want to, like, why would you question love? I
Right.
don't know.
Don't you want to love?
Don't you want to love? Like, yes, there is, because it starts off with a little bit of My Country 'Tis of Thee, and you see the flag waving, and then it slowly goes. The visual goes into police lights,
Mm.
and so immediately you know where you are, you know what you're experiencing, and then in the process of the whole thing, the journey ends in love, like, because love is the only force.
I think I remember that. And I love that you remember it as well. Having seen the recital twice, I think that the question of why love, why would you end on love, might have been sparked from a place of wanting it to be more forceful or more dramatic or more traumatic, because unfortunately, sometimes we are conditioned to, and we talk about this all the time as Black artists, um, it, people experiencing Black trauma. And it might have been that the journey that she took at that time was this journey of her going through whatever it was, and she wanted to end perhaps with a statement or action or drama. But the amazing thing is that love and the act of love, the actionable act of love, to your point, Karen, is the most forceful act. And it says a lot sometimes, like just thinking about that and this conversation about why, the question of why end on love? It's like, if we can't actualize the action of loving one another, then we cannot actualize the action of humanity in its purest sense.
You better
And I
preach.
don't know if she was thinking about all of that, but I certainly remember her question about why did you want to end on love? And, I mean, they like for those listeners and whomever, like who's not experienced of the icing, it is a 50-minute soliloquy, an inner immersive, a 50-minute immersive soliloquy um, through the eyes of someone of color, a Black person. And I think it's beautiful that it ends on love because, as I said earlier, as artists and as Black artists, we want to experience, let me speak from the I. When I was in this art form as a singer, I wanted to experience the love of people from doing the thing that I was on stage doing. And as we've evolved into 2020, 2021, 2025, I hear a lot of our colleagues talk about wanting to write about the expression of love and wanting to write about Black artists wanting to write about the expression of love and the expression of joy, because there is that unfortunate condition that that's not what's being asked of
Right.
Black artists sometimes. And so it might be a subconscious thing that this individual was feeling or experiencing, but it's really quite a powerful statement that that particular cycle, that particular recital goes through the emotions that it goes through to end on love, which for all of us, like, should feel like the most pure thing.
I'm sorry that I missed the recital. Is it going to happen anytime soon?
Listen, we can make it
Let's
happen.
please. Can we make it happen?
We sure can. We sure can without
Say the
the,
words.
Actually,
yeah,
we talking on, Karen, we going to talk. So,
we're gonna talk. We're
yeah.
gonna talk. Plotting and scheming. But yes, the quote is love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. That is the final song in that evening. But yes, it's anyway, yes.
Okay, Afton.
So, Michael Bobbitt is the new president and CEO of Opera America.
So I don't know him, but I saw his picture. How am I supposed to feel about this?
As a member of the board, I am quite thrilled by the news.
Okay, good.
Um, as a member of the community of opera goers, lovers, supporters, I am I am personally thrilled about the news because this signals and signifies what I hope to be a true change, shift, and transformation in this industry,
Which is what we need.
which is exactly what we need. I think it signifies hope for the future as a form and as a field and as a genre that is moving to, hopefully, this next place.
Mm.
And I hope that it signifies that for all that is good, bad, worse, indifferent, that this industry can be sometimes and can feel and can make people feel, we are capable of rising to the moment.
It's pretty damn huge, and the industry needs it, man. Good Lord, have mercy. Does he have a background in opera?
He doesn't have a background in opera, but he
Even
has,
better.
right? We have been saying, let me speak in the I have been saying that the business model of opera is broken
Hmm.
and it needs to be evolved. And there's nothing better and no one better to help to lead that charge than someone who does not have rose-colored glasses about the industry.
100%. Karen, what are your thoughts?
Um, I'm quite shocked.
Is this a
And
good shot or
I was going to say a good shock. I should have said that. I should have said like good trouble, right? A good shock. I'm quite surprised because I assumed that those who were choosing the next leader of Opera America would be wanting to go 2.0.
uh-huh.
And because I still feel like our industry is stuck in the romanticism of what it used to be, what it is. I still think opera is the greatest art form. Um, one of the greatest art forms,
Yep.
I've given my life to this. So of course I think it's incredible. But I do believe, but I think that what happened is that those same people have realized that the system is broken and that there's no way that we can continue on and do business as usual. Even if there were no pandemic or, murder or George Floyd and all the other things, like the whole world is shifting, everything is shifting. So there's just no way. And also, new models are successfully happening
Hmm.
in some opera companies in some cities. Like some people are not doing it the way
Yep.
we always did it, and they are growing audiences, and they are, budgets are growing, and all those things. So, but I'm conflicted only because
I heard a little doubt in your voice.
because I do know I've been in the system long enough to know that two things. Once the glitter wears off, then what?
Yeah.
And it's something to do with this man.
No.
It is about just I know how people are, number one, but also number two, there needs to be systems and protections in place to combat
Hmm.
the the negativity, the grifters. Let's talk about the grifters.
Yep.
People who appear to be supportive, and they come in all shades, in all sizes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Let's just be real about that. And and also, yeah, that's the reality of the matter, is that when you make a decision like that, when you put people of color in leadership, when you put women in leadership positions, please do not pretend like there needs to be systems in place to support. And it's not about having extra or doing extra. It is just that is the way of the world. That is the reality of the matter.
Is there any way we can support him, Afton?
I love that you asked that question. I mean, with any leadership transition, there's always the need to set the organization and that leader up for success in a way that allows them to be able to do the thing to make the change.
Right.
And that is by philanthropic support. And I say that, very proudly and boldly, because when you have such a significant leadership change like that of the outgoing president and CEO, Mark Skorka, who's been leading Opera America for 35 years, you run a very high risk of the philanthropic landscape, being swept from underneath the organization. And that's with any organization, right? And so we can support Michael's appointment and leadership by philanthropically supporting Opera America, by becoming a member, by making a donation, and to put the icing on the cake, make it in honor of him, right? To show the field, to show Opera America that you support this individual's leadership. For what it's worth, maybe going to the conference, because that will be one of his first industry big moments.
Yeah, it's out in public like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is it? It's in Delaware?
It's in Delaware.
Okay. That's really well said. I hope that he is set up for a success, and I hope that people don't put unrealistic expectations on him. I worry about that when somebody in that position. And I hope, when you said that, I sort of felt a little bit of a sigh of relief in a way. And so I don't know if that's putting too much of an expectation on him. But everything that you said to describe him, it sounds like this is going to be an amazing match.
Listen, I root for everybody Black all the time.
Right. I got the t-shirt that says it.
I need one. But that's just how I roll. And I agree. We have to be very conscientious about not unloading a burden of unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get him on the show. Is that unrealistic?
No, we can make that happen.
Let's make that happen. Come
on, Michael.
Mr. Bobbitt.
Come on, Mr. Bobbitt. Ew.
Come on.
All right. Well, look, y'all, I ain't gonna hold you long.
Robbie was all ready to come on, but we got too heavy for him, so he left.
Robbie left?
Come on and bring my friend Penny.
Where's Penny and Rudy?
Listen, I'm surprised Penny ain't came through when she hears my voice.
I know she's sitting over there on her stoop. She's relaxing. She just had some Sheba, so I think she got the itis.
She got the itis.
She's like, I don't want to be in front of guests. My belly is a little full.
Exactly. She over there stretching down, and Rudy's over by the front door. But they had a little Instagram moment today, so told them they had some Instagram. Had a couple of likes on their on the Instagram today. So, but everybody here is good.
All right. Well, good. Look, I ain't gonna hold y'all. Thank you so much for being on the show. I love y'all both, and
love y'all.
We're gonna keep it pushing.
We're going to push on through.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I just want to take a second to give flowers to Misty Copeland, who took her final bow with the American Ballet Theater in late October. Misty was the first Black principal dancer with the company and helped change the face of the art form, to put it simply. When asked if this was a good time to leave the stage because of all the takedown of DEI, she said,
I think it's the exact right time for me to be stepping off the stage for this, because I think that the impact that I can have off the stage is going to be greater than what I've done. It's been 25 years that I've been a Black body on this stage, and I think that there's been a lot of movement and shifts, but it's more than just seeing yourself on the stage. What's being implemented behind the scenes, it's the schools, it's how are we getting teachers in schools who look like the children they're serving, it's getting board members who are making these decisions, who represent a greater group of people. There's so much work to be done, and it's exciting to me, and I think it's the exact right time.
Thank you for listening to episode 7 of Artillery, the podcast that meets at the intersection of art and politics. Keep art alive, y'all.